So I've spoken about nice guys as covert bitches. I want to shed on light on another type of bitch. It's the arrogant dumb bitch. I feel a need to call out this particular type of bitch because these bitches are often put in positions to make decisions that does real harm to the rest of society. Who am I talking about here? It's honestly a range of people, but essentially these are the ones that claim to be experts in an area and speak on issues that they have no business speaking on. The ones either that either don't have the self awareness or don't care that they are wrong. But they don't necessarily need to be claiming to be experts. It's honestly just anyone who can't acknowledge their mistakes, either because they're too dumb to realize they're wrong, or they just don't care because it benefits them to double down on something false. Okay. What's hard about this group of bitches is that they come in so many flavors. Joe Rogan, for instance, I think is this type of bitch. He says a bunch of dumb shit that is completely uninformed or provides a platform for a bunch of dumbasses saying dumb shit. Which is annoying, but honestly, they have the right to do that. They have the right to do so, right? You can say whatever you want. It's a free country. I'm not going to stop somebody from creating a podcast and just going off. I mean, I go off whenever I feel like on my own podcast. What I see though is someone who isn't interested in actually getting to the truth and just entertains any dumb fucking idea as being on par with any properly informed idea. It's not the mistakes that are being made or the false beliefs so much as the reckless disregard for any standard of critical thinking that makes him a dumb bitch. If he was trying to get at the truth and cared enough to be a bit more careful about what he said or who he brought into the platform, I'd probably have no problem with them, right? People make mistakes. They believe false things. They make errors in critical thinking and judgment. Um, it's all part of just being a human, right? But just not having any standard for truth is just dumb bitch shit. I know he doesn't have any standard because of what he says. Sorry, not because of what he says, but by the way he responds to criticisms about his podcast. He doesn't bother to listen to any of it. In fact, I don't think like there's so many times when he says some dumb shit where it's like it could have just easily been fact checked just with like a 10-second Google search. It doesn't take much. Like I'm not holding him to some high standard of truth or critical thinking. It's just like just do your basic research, right? Like the most basic kind of research. Okay. The fact that you just genuinely dismiss any of the critiques that come your way or don't even bother to correct yourself, like that's what dumb bitches do. They double down on their stupidity. But this isn't the only shape that this particular type of bitch comes in, right? Many very intelligent people, at least on paper, with their degrees and awards, can also be this type of dumb bitch. If any one of you have been a part of academia, especially at a prestigious research college, at the graduate level or higher, especially, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There are people. Again, I'm not gonna paint a broad brush and say like this is just like everybody in academia, but there is a significant number of people in academia. But also I've found in politics and management who got there with some skills and work. Right, so they put in the work. They have some skills, in the least, they know how to talk to people well enough to get those positions. But most likely, they also receive various degrees, certificates, awards, whatever other accolades they took credit for to help them get into these positions. So they aren't complete idiots. I don't want to just say that they're, like Joe Rogan status dumb, right? They're not that. So then what makes them a bitch? It's when they go off the deep end and speak outside of their area of expertise or become overly confident in their belief because they have all these fancy degrees and awards to show for it. It's when their head gets too big for their body and they shift away from, just a dude who has some ideas to just being a complete bitch. Okay. Why does this happen? I honestly don't know, but I have some suspicions as to why people don't just stick to their lane and just say, like, hey, I'm an expert in this small subset in this area. This is all I know. And what I know is what I know. And I don't know anything else with much certainty. I don't know why people just start to like it's like their idea that this idea that they know something makes them feel like they know more than they really do, right? I don't know exactly why this happens, but I have some suspicions. I'm gonna just lay out some of them. I don't again. I'm not an expert. Somebody go ahead and look into it and then tell me what the accurate picture is as to why this happens. Maybe it just varies, right? For each person, it's a little bit different. Okay, but here's some suspicions that I want to kind of throw out there. See what you think. Okay, for one, I imagine if you spent your life on some idea and promoting it, you're so committed to it that acknowledging you're wrong would be devastating to your sense of self. Okay. You've poured yourself into some, let's say, research area. And I imagine it's hard to acknowledge that all of that research, all that work was in vain. That sucks. That sucks. So I can empathize with that. But unfortunately, if you're going to be in denial about it instead of dealing with the fact that maybe, your life's work might not have been as fruitful as you've wanted to be or you hoped it to be, if you can't acknowledge it, if you can't learn to deal with reality, just face it head on, then you're a bitch. I get that it's hard. Like, look, not being a bitch is really hard. Like, it's super hard. It's easy to be a bitch. Like, the bitch route is the easy way to go. It's hard to be a man. It's hard to be a real man. So I imagine this might be one reason is, look, you might have good reason to be committed to something that you believe in. And, there might be like investments of your time, energy, your heart that you put into it. So it sucks. But again, reality is reality. You need to learn to deal with it and to navigate through that reality once you're faced with it, right? So I don't know what it's going to take for you to go ahead and acknowledge it. Maybe there's an out for you. Maybe there's an alternative. Some way you could turn all this investment that you put into something else. I don't know. But what I do know is that the more you're in denial of it, the more of a bitch you are. That's all I know. Another reason that you might go down this route to becoming a bitch is that you bought into some praise and accolades that you received, whether it was accurate or not. Maybe people gassed you up for whatever reason. From spending 10 minutes on ChatGPT, I never want to go on ChatGPT again because this is kind of what it felt like to be on ChatGPT. It felt like ChatGPT was gassing me up. It's not just that they would just like report information that I was asking for. If I was throwing out some ideas, then ChatGPT would gas me up and be like, "Oh, yeah, it's a great idea. That's very insightful of you," like that kind of shit, right? Um, so then, if you hear a lot of this from people, from ChatGPT, from wherever else, okay, you hear it enough, you might start buying into it. Your head might get big. You might think that you're bigger and better than you really are. If you don't surround yourself with good friends who call you out on bullshit, who will check you when you get out of line, then you have people gassing you up. You're going to get an overinflated sense of self. That's going to turn you into a bitch because you're not going to see the mistakes you're making. You're not going to have people pointing them out to you. Like, this happens, right? And I also understand that this happens a lot as you gain fame, wealth, things like this. People will come around you. They might want something from you. And one way to kind of get that done is by gassing you up and then saying all these wonderful things to you to try to butter you up. Always be suspicious of those people because they're probably going to slowly turn you into a little bitch. Okay. Again, what's keeping you from, becoming a real man instead of a bitch is not so much that you make mistakes or not. Everybody makes mistakes. It's that you have a hard time admitting that you're wrong when you do make a mistake and you don't revise your beliefs to match what's actually more likely to be true. Part of this is going to be that you don't have the checks around you, or you are addicted to this sort of praise from other people that you don't want to hear the criticisms or the alternative viewpoints or people who disagree with you. You might not want to hear it, and the more you don't allow yourself to stay exposed to that, the more you're going to make yourself a bitch. Another suspicion I have is that the very reason you sought out recognition and degrees and whatever the accolades are, right? Whatever drove you to try to be successful in this respect, uh, it probably already stems from some sort of insecurity you have. You were probably already an insecure bitch. and you thought that accomplishing all these things would make you look and feel less like a bitch. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but like I said before, the fact that you aren't directly addressing your insecurity and instead trying to mask your insecurities with all these accolades means that, well, that's right, you're still a bitch. That's what you are. If you're a bitch for these reasons, then I'm guessing you're probably a bitch across the board, not just in academic settings or in work settings, right? Insecurities can't be contained in that way. I'm not saying that you are, but I would not be surprised if you were the type to be resentful towards some younger graduate students or people who work underneath you who critique what it is that you do. You're probably the type to use your power and influence to feed your own insecurities so that you feel less like a bitch when the truth is that it's your bitch ass ego that's leading you to belittle and control and manipulate others. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying this is exactly what you do. I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised because bitches be bitches wherever they go. Like, if you have these insecurities, they're going to show in some form or fashion. Okay. But if you sought out this kind of recognition, if you were trying to puff yourself up and then make yourself feel big because you're feeling insecure about something for whatever reason, and instead of dealing with the insecurity, you decide to try to use these accolades as a way to make yourself feel less insecure, then you're probably still the same bitch that you were before you received all these accolades. Okay. Are you getting the picture here? Look, like I said, it's not just academia. I was using that as one example. It's everywhere. It's any successful bitch, successful in the sense of like, you know, I don't know, public accolades or something, awards, degrees, things like that. Um, Especially motherfuckers who love the public eye. It's pretty common out there, right? So actors, musicians, politicians, these areas are just swarming with this type of bitch. Uh, Even in the teaching profession, I've seen a lot of bitches like this. These are the teachers who make the teaching all about themselves and they feel a great sense of joy in receiving a bunch of awards for their teaching or I don't know what, like going on TED Talk and then having everybody like talk about gush over how wonderful they were. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, right? It's all over and it makes sense. If you're insecure and you need to fill that insecurity by getting a bunch of recognition, then clearly you're going to go to places that give you that sort of recognition. Maybe even, you know, the people or communities that are willing to exploit you for your need for this sort of recognition. I just use academia as an example because I think, um, people can already see much of the bitch assetry easily in these other fields. People often talk about politicians being spineless bitches. And I think they're, mostly accurate about most of these politicians, probably. Like I said, I don't know any of them individually, but if I were to start digging around to their personal lives, I wouldn't be surprised if I found a good chunk of them to be this type of bitch. But maybe people don't see it. So, again, it's just anywhere where people are looking for some sort of recognition. I'm always suspicious that they are trying to cover up some sort of insecurity. So, yeah, generally just assume if you like the spotlight, if you revel in it, if you seek it out, you're probably a bitch. That's probably I think, a good assumption. Uh, and just because you're intelligent or do things that help the world, like you're given to charity all over the place or you pass good policy, doesn't mean you're not a bitch. You're just a bitch that does good things because you want recognition like a bitch. Okay. Oh, God, let me pause for a second. I feel like I've been saying bitch a whole lot over the last 10 minutes. Now I feel like I'm going to become a bitch myself by speaking it into existence. Ugh. Okay, short break. So, oh, see, uh, it's trying to escape me. So the point holds. Just because you accomplished some stuff, found success, are actually capable in some area, none of this changes whether or not you're a bitch. If you're doing it for the wrong reasons, like to fill your own insecurities, or if you're moving with an overinflated sense of self, if you make it about yourself and your own greatness, you're a bitch. Period. End of story. Okay. I can't leave this discussion without pointing out a particular special subcategory of this type of bitch. This is a place. This is a type of bitch that has a special place in my heart, and namely that I hate them with a passion. And that's the social media self-proclaimed expert influencer bitch. Okay. I recently got into economics, finance, tax law, that kind of stuff, just for my own edification. I just started digging into it. But I also see this with regards to the educational sector as well, especially people giving advice on how to get into competitive colleges and so on. I was actually personally seeking out some legit experts, just because I was just curious if there was some podcast or something I could listen to that might be of interest to me, and was just curious about thoughts from experts in this area, um, economists, attorneys, finance types, and so on. Right. But soon enough, my feed was flooded with dumb bitches with no real expertise in anything, trying to tell me that they had this secret answer to success, which they'll share with me if I just pay them some money. Of course, they were trying to sell me something, right? Okay, look, you dumb bitch. I'm not falling for your scam. I don't know. Maybe you really believe what you preach and that what you have to offer is actually doing some good. I'm skeptical, but I honestly believe that a lot of bitches believe the crazy dumb shit that they are preaching, even if it's like completely wrong. You can buy into your own bullshit, right? You realize this, right? Like you can buy into your own bullshit. Just because you believe it yourself doesn't make you right, and your overconfidence in your own shit makes me think that you're a dumb bitch. Because honestly, I don't know where your overconfidence is coming from. Look, I know experts, real experts in their fields, right? They're level headed and they acknowledge just how much they don't know, right? They're not even that confident, right? Like, I think the people that I've met that I believe are genuine experts that are very knowledgeable in their area, like, because they're so knowledgeable, they also are aware that there's a lot of information that they don't have, a lot of predictions that they know will be probably be wrong because, it's not an easy thing to do, right? You know why they're not confident? Like, it's because they know just how much they don't know. Right. So overconfident motherfuckers tend to be the dumb bitches that don't know that they're dumb. Like they're blind to their dumbness. Right. So don't look to them for any sort of guidance. They're probably wrong. I'm thinking like Andrew Tate. I'm thinking all these financial advisors on social media who only have real expertise in some narrow subset of finance, like in real estate or something, but then they give general like finance advice or investing advice. It's like, you dumb bitch, you don't know any of this stuff, right? And especially the dumb fucks who graduated from competitive colleges like Stanford or Harvard and are now making money trying to sell you some program claiming that they have some deep insight into college applications or how to study effectively or some other dumb shit that they don't really know anything about. You dumb bitches. Like, look, were you ever on the admissions committee or even made decisions on like even a scholarship committee or any of these places where you were on the other side of it, where you had to look through a bunch of different student applications and then make decisions about who gets, these opportunities and who doesn't? Do you even know anything about learning science? Did you like actually pour through the range of empirical research in this area, study it thoroughly like the real experts actually do? I doubt it because you're saying some dumb shit that doesn't align with the research. You dumb bitch. Okay. And it's the same thing in the finance sector, right? Like a lot of the people, like, look, I've figured this out that for most people, finance is fairly simple, right? Like, don't spend more than what you have. Work on, getting a better income, like higher income, you know, investing, like you probably don't know better than the experts. So don't try to beat out the experts. Like, it's fairly straightforward. Like if you stay in your lane and not go and think that you know more than you do, then you're usually fine. But a lot of times people are trying to give you some secret sauce that is supposed to lead to wealth. Honestly, it sounds more like a scam to me. Look, either you're a scam artist and you know it, which makes you a selfish bitch, or you believe your hype, your own hype, which makes you a dumb bitch. Whichever way you cut it, you're a bitch. Okay. And what's worse is that you're doing real harm. That's my concern, right? My concern is that it's not just your bitchness contained within you and you deal with your own bitchness. This is part of the problem with bitch assetry, right? It's like an infection. It's on a wound that just like spreads and it just infects all the things around it, right? That's my concern is that it's not going to be contained to within you. It's going to negatively impact people who don't know any better. and maybe can't know any better because no one called you out on your bitch ass, and so they just go along with your bitch assatry. Oh, shit, I'm getting worked up. So many dumb bitches. Uh, Look, remember in the previous episode when I said, we need to distinguish. This is like several episodes ago, but like I said, we need to distinguish real value from perceived value. Uh, isn't most of marketing just trying to pump up perceived value? That's what these social media influencer types and the game that they play feels like. It feels like you're trying to pump up your own perceived value without actually doing the work to increase your real value. Now, there are some who do put in the work. I appreciate them, right? But they are far and few between. They're probably much more often, from what I've seen in my feeds, more often than not, it's just a bunch of dumb bitches that don't have any real value, that hasn't put in the work to doing their homework, doing the research, doing the hard work to really develop some sort of skill set. All y'all is just bitches. That's what you are. Okay. Now, I'm guessing this is part of the reason that so many people are not keen on experts, because everybody like this claims to be an expert and they just are really scam artists. Now, look, I value expertise. Um, I don't want people to just shit on experts across the board. I'll be clear with you, like, at least for me, I'm not an expert on most things in life. Okay. And I need to rely on the expertise of others to make it through life. I am in no position, for instance, to question like all these climate scientists on climate change because I don't know enough about the topic. Okay. And I've read up on quite a bit of it, but I'm definitely not an expert in that area. Same for when I'm deciding on like a medical treatment, right? Like, look, I go to a doctor or a string of doctors, get multiple opinions to try to get as many expert opinions on this as possible. I don't trust my own judgment on it because I don't know enough about this stuff, right? I didn't go to med school. I don't know. I don't know enough about science or medical science to know what the right course of treatment is, right? So at the end of the day, my decision will probably be some product of some amalgamation of these expert opinions, not my own intuitions. Even something as simple as fixing a car, I'd probably be, like wouldn't know what to do. I would need a mechanic to tell me exactly what needs to get fixed, right? I respect experts who put in the time and mental energy to improve their craft. Okay. Yet I think many are skeptical of experts. And I think for good reason, right? Like my students are often skeptical of students. I teach critical thinking, and we talk a lot about when and how, and we could trust experts. And many have this intuitive feeling that all these experts are not as intelligent or insightful as they make themselves out to be. And I could see why. Like when you have so many people claiming to be experts that are really not experts, it gets confusing. You can't differentiate one from the other. And so you don't know who to trust. And so your default then becomes, I'm not going to trust any of them. Right. It's because of all these things I've talked about, all these dumb bitches that are out there parading around calling themselves experts when they're just a bunch of scam artists. So I don't blame people for being skeptical of experts. If people are down on experts who don't want to give experts their, due credit, I could understand why that is. So it doesn't help to just go ahead and say, look, don't trust experts. It doesn't help because, look, I still need to rely on experts like that, at least for me. And it doesn't help to just try to believe anybody who claims to be an expert, right? Like neither of these extremes seem to be a smart way to go. So then what can we do about these dumb bitches? Well, I think it's important not to lump everyone together. We need to have some tools to differentiate between who we can really trust and who we can't. Some people are doing really important work, good work, right? In fact, I think even on my website, I promote some of these individuals that I think are doing real work, that have done the work, that are real experts in their area. I don't necessarily agree with everything they say, if there's some shared areas of expertise, but even there, I have a good amount of respect for them, and I believe that even when I believe they're wrong with good reason, right? Like they have done the work, they're knowledgeable in the area. Experts can disagree on stuff. That's pretty normal. Experts don't all agree on everything, right? Okay. So what we're looking for are real men that put in real hours to improve their craft, to provide something of real value, not just perceived value. And so I'm going to try to give you some general principles to follow in making the distinction, and I hope that it serves you well. These are kind of like rules of thumb that I follow. It's not perfect, but it at least kind of gives you some idea of certain red flags to kind of look out for. Moments when you're like, okay, I think I might need to do a deeper dive on this person before I could believe any of the things that they say, or if I could trust their advice, right? Uh, so here are some guiding principles that I think you can try to follow. Okay. First off, real experts, they are not overly defensive. Okay. If you get triggered by someone questioning whether or not you're right, you're probably a bitch, right? And real experts that aren't bitches wouldn't honestly be offended by your questioning them. If anything, they'd probably geek out and try to explain it to you in a way that makes sense. Why is that? Because real experts understand that this stuff is complicated. There's a lot of nuance, and that there are elements of whatever it is that they believe that are open for debate, that it's not set in stone, right? Real experts talk to other experts, and then so, like, they understand that this is part of, defending your position is that you need to explain it. You don't get defensive and you don't, start going off on how you should trust me. I'm the expert. You don't know any better. I'm the one who knows better. You should just believe whatever it is I say. Like real experts are not like that. At least the real experts that aren't bitches. What they'll more likely do is they'll try to give an explanation to help things make sense. Right? Okay, so that's the first thing I look out for. I look out for somebody who's like, look, can they handle a critique or an objection, or do they just get all worked up and then huff and puff about how they should be trusted because they're the expert? Okay. All right. Second thing, experts are generally fairly nuanced in their position. And I think they rarely speak with much certainty or overconfidence. Okay. And this is partly because the more you learn about a topic, the more you understand the limitations of what you know. This is kind of what I've gained from going into like a PhD program and doing research in an area and trying to read everything there is on a particular topic. I realized, look, I don't know everything. Like, there's just too much to read and too many ideas that have been floated around by people before me, people who are well regarded, that I'm just not going to know everything. There's a lot that I'm not going to know. Right. And I don't realize how much I'm not going to know until I actually decide I'm going to try to know as much as I can about this particular topic. That's when I realize, oh, shoot, I feel overwhelmed. There's a lot here. I don't get all of it. Right. You just realize, like, look, there are limitations. Right. So, and then you also, because you know so much about the different perspectives on the same topic, you could also see, all these different perspectives and why there might be some areas of potential disagreement. You become less certain, right? You become less certain because you're like, oh, I'm excited for the possibilities of what could be, but there are a bunch of objections that are, well, good points that are being made, which should dampen my strength of confidence in whatever it is that I think there's a real possibility of being true. Okay. People on the cutting edge of research tend to get excited about the possibilities, but they'll also acknowledge that there's still more to learn, right? It's really the salespeople that are gassing up what's possible. Like, Elon Musk is kind of like this. Like, he always overpromises and underdelivers. Such a bitch, right? Like, don't believe anything Elon says because he's been wrong so many times. That should be like proof, right? That not to believe anything he says. His timelines are always off by a lot, like years, like, or some promises he just has never delivered on, right? There's a reason for it. Salespeople are good at gassing you up on what could be true or what's possible. Real experts are a lot more cautious because they realize, ooh, it's actually a lot harder. These problems are much harder to solve than the general public gives credit for, right? So experts, generally fairly nuanced, will not speak with, much certainty. They'll always try to couch what they say with highly possible, likely, right? They're not going to give 100% certainty. They're not going to sound that confident in whatever it is that they're saying. Okay, so that's the second thing to look out for. Third thing, experts only speak to a narrow range of expertise, not outside of it. Okay, look, experts are experts at a particular thing. They're not an expert in everything. They're experts at very specific things. Okay. I would not ask ethics questions to Neil deGrasse Tyson because he's not an expert in ethics. He might have an opinion on it, but it's an it's a pretty uninformed opinion. I mean, even if did study some of this stuff, he's not an expert in ethics. He's just a guy who maybe has thought about some stuff and then has some opinions on it. He does have expertise. I think his expertise is in astrophysics, but that's a very narrow field. That's not even all of physics, right? So like, look, we need to be very careful here. Experts usually should anyways, a good expert anyways, will probably couch their expertise in terms of this is my area of expertise. I could speak as an expert on this area. I do have opinions on a bunch of other stuff, but that's my opinion as a fellow human being, is not as an expert. Okay. Look, everything I talk about here about what it means to be a bitch and all this, like defining it and drawing these lines, I'm not speaking as an expert. Like, I don't have expertise in, what it means to be a man or a bitch. I've said that from the very beginning. This is just my opinion on stuff, right? If you try to slap me with, oh, you're trying to speak as an expert on this stuff, it's like, no, it's just a guy with an opinion, right? I thought about this stuff a lot, but I'm by no means an expert. And you shouldn't treat anything I say as the views of an expert and then tout it around with any sort of authority. You shouldn't do that at all. Form your own damn opinions, right? We could have a conversation about it. We could help each other, think about these things more deeply. But I didn't study what it means to be a bitch. Like, I didn't do some deep dive into this, right? I just have a bunch of opinions from my own experience on stuff. And this is part of the reason that you'll see me say, like, look, I'm not an expert in this area. Go talk to a sociologist about this. Go talk to a cultural anthropologist about that. Go talk to a psychologist about this. Look, I'm not an expert in all these fields. I will leave it up to the experts to go ahead and say something about it, at least the areas that I just don't know enough about. Okay, so that's the third thing. Okay, fourth thing, experts usually have the backing of other experts, right? If you're not an expert in a field of study or an industry, you honestly wouldn't know who is better or worse because you don't know what you should be measuring, right? You need to rely on actual experts to give you insight on who is respected in the field. So it's kind of hard because, like, look, which experts should I trust, right? Like, maybe they're all on the same campus. Look, it happens. There's biases that happens among experts. They might be all trained in the same school, and so they might have the same sort of approach, and that approach might just be wrong. Okay, but generally, you yourself, like this is like the key part of this is you need to start acknowledging your limitations, right? You're not an expert, and if you're not an expert, you're gonna have a hard time identifying who the experts are. Degrees and so on could help if they're from accredited institutions and so on. But again, there's a lot of dumb bitches with degrees. All right. You need to rely on some sort of consensus among experts about which expert opinions are more or less reliable collectively. All right. When I am looking at research, like when I'm trying to help students be better about like learning, and I'm reading up on the research in this area of learning science, right? Like it's like a very interdisciplinary field. I don't ever rely on just one study or a string of studies from one particular researcher. And the reason for it is that there's a potential, even with experts, for bias, right? What I rely instead on is collectively what the direction of the research, where the direction of research is going, as in what the results are generally pointing to, the general direction that all these, research projects have been pointing to as the stuff that actually works for learning. If you rely on one study, you're gonna be you're putting yourself in a bad spot. Why? Because there's always going to be outliers, and it's the same thing with experts. There's always going to be outliers. There's going to be one or two experts that say some batshit crazy stuff that all the other experts are like, look, yo, you got the math wrong. You got the research wrong. You're biased and paid for by you're going to get called out, right? for whatever it is. Usually, if you have the minority opinion, I mean, it could still be correct, but even if it's correct, it's probably for the wrong reason, or at least there's a good chance of it. I usually rely on collective decision making, and that requires us to look at the entirety of a field, not just at one or two experts, right? Um, which is why even when I'm looking at the social media influencers and kind of trying to screen them for people that I think are reliable, I won't trust any one of them. I'll probably look at a collection of them, right, that are not just parroting each other's views, that are independent of one another, and try to make a decision based off of collectively like where the areas of agreement and disagreement are, right? That's usually a fairly again, no guarantee, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb to kind of follow, I think. Now, these four things that I pointed out, these are not guarantees, but the combination of these should help steer you in the right direction. In the least, I think we can expose those that need to get exposed, right? Unfortunately, we need to do this regularly, like all the time, right? Like I said from the first episode, like there's too many people that have a hard time seeing bitches for who they are. So, explaining who the real bitches are and why they're bitches, it helps us to at least know what to look for. But the guidelines I gave you, these are still not guarantees. And on top of that, because there's so many self-proclaimed experts, you're going to probably have to, utilize these principles pretty regularly, right? It takes a lot of time and energy to do it. But that should also mean that you will probably be more wary of believing whatever you see online, which is honestly for me, that would be a win. That would be a good thing because honestly, I would say, I don't know what the exact percentage would be, but I'd probably say 80 to 90% of the stuff online is just trash, right? Um, you want to pick out the nuggets of good material, solid information, reliable information that you can. Okay. All right. Now, I need to confess something. Some of you who know me personally or have listened to most of my podcasts um, probably are sensing some hypocrisy coming from me because I often speak like I'm certain. I often sound like super arrogant and confident about my views. I've actually often been accused of being arrogant in this way, of being an elitist, of beating people over the head with ideas without supporting my views. I talk mad shit. Let's just be honest. I'll just put it out there. Right? I talk mad shit. I should probably get some of that under control. Much of it is my tendency to not speak with a nuance that reflects my actual belief. If you press me on anything I have ever said, you'll actually, like, if you want to hear my real views, you'll hear me be a lot more nuanced, right? It's like, actually, it's a bit more complicated than that, or, I'm fairly certain, but it's actually possible that I'm wrong. I say this all after the fact, so sometimes people get annoyed with me because they're like, oh, why do you sound so certain in the beginning and then backtrack? It's like, well, I'm not meaning to, but speaking with nuance sometimes is kind of hard and exhausting to like, but maybe this is like it's. For me, anyways, I tend to go off on tangents if I focus on all the nuances, right? And then people get annoyed for a different reason because it feels like I'm going off on tangents. Okay, I want to be clear about something. I'm generally not certain about anything, right? I personally usually play a percentage game. How confident am I in my belief? And most of my beliefs fall under like 80% confidence. Most. There's a lot of other areas, like specifically in economics, politics. Um, there's certain areas where my confidence level is even lower because I'm like, I know I don't know enough, and it's just hard to predict with regards to some of these things that have a lot of moving parts and a lot of variables. I just know I'm probably going to be wrong in any prediction. So, you know, if I were to be completely honest with you, I'm fairly uncertain about most things. People who know me fairly well know this. You know, I've spoken about this, I think, in other places, but, one of the first classes in philosophy that got me going, that got me excited was a course on Descartes, where we're discussing like radical skepticism. And the ideas from those discussions really stuck with me. Like I'm fairly unconfident in most of my beliefs. Like we're talking even like, will the sun rise tomorrow or will it be a sunny day tomorrow? And I live in California. It's like, of course it's gonna be a sunny day tomorrow, right? Like But even that, I'm like 90% certain, 80%. I mean, depends on the time of the year, right? But I do often talk in a way that might express more certainty than I hold. That's my fault. Something for me to work on. Um, I'm sorry if I gave you that impression. Although I'm not going to lie, sometimes I do it just to be funny as part of my sense of humor. But I want to be clear about something. I think it's also besides the point, right? The point I've been trying to make is not that people can't be mistaken or faulty or overly confident from time to time. I said, like, look, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody is confident about something they believe to be true, and then turns out they're wrong, right? It happens. It happens all the time. I'm not as concerned about that. It's about that deeper thing in you. As I've said, we all have a little bitch in us. But the question is whether or not you left this bitch inside you, you left it unchecked and let it run rampant. Okay? You will be wrong. You will be overconfident in something you have no business being overconfident in. You'll be arrogant at times. I am this way sometimes. I make this mistake fairly regularly, I think. The question is, can you acknowledge it when you're called out for it? Can you see that you are being a bitch and make a genuine effort to be better? I know this isn't saying much, but I'll be real. I was worse than I am now. I mean, if you think I talk shit now, it was worse before, and far more hurtful to others, right? Uh, yes, it could get worse than the way I am already. So that just tells you the long road that I had to travel to being less of a bitch. All this to say, look, I'm working on being better. And if you're one of these bitches that I'm describing, look, it's possible for you to not be such a bitch. You could work on it. You could be better about it. But what you need to do is you need to acknowledge your bitch assetry in order to take the steps to recovery, right? Um, I've acknowledged long ago that I have a problem and that I was truly being a bitch in a lot of ways. Okay. It's your turn to take those steps as well. I am going to be okay with you making mistakes. I'm going to be okay with your being overconfident and arrogant at times. That's fine as long as you're taking steps to be better about it. That's all that I ask. Right. And if you're willing to take that journey, if you're willing to take steps to be better, I will walk through life with you and we'll get through it together. We'll be less of a bitch together. We'll call each other out for shit and we will point out each other's like flaws and mistakes and help each other be better about it. And I promise it gets better. It gets better, but it only gets better if you actually take the steps to be better. So make all the mistakes, be wrong, be arrogant at times, but learn from it. Acknowledge when you've stepped out of line. Listen to other people when they point out that you're being an arrogant bitch and learn to acknowledge, to admit when you're wrong. It's okay. Admitting that you're wrong doesn't make you a bitch. Not admitting it is what makes you a bitch. And that's the one thing I want is for you to stop being a bitch.